Hello and welcome to the April 4th City of Morro Bay Water Reclamation Facility Citizens Advisory Committee. We are going to call this meeting to order, and looking here we have all members present, so we have a quorum. We could have a moment of silence, please. Thank you, and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us to announcements or presentations. No presentations today from the advisory committee or the public, but any announcements from staff?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We wanted to just say we know that there are a number of citizens groups that are meeting in the community to talk about the project. I think that's great. If any of them would like for city staff or program management team to participate in any of those and just answer questions or respond to issues or concerns, we're glad to do that. So just feel free to reach out to us. The city's wharf project website is morrobaywrf.com, and our program, the deputy program manager for outreach is John Rickenbach, and his email address and contact information is on the website, as is mine. And so I just wanted to say we're glad to meet with groups and respond to questions, do whatever we can to help answer what's been done so far.
Okay, thank you. Any announcements from staff or the advisory committee? Jenny.
I just have one quick announcement. Just wanted to let people know that the California Financing Coordinating Committee, the CFCC, is, can you hear me? Okay. The California Financing Coordinating Committee, the CFCC, is going to hold a funding fair tomorrow, and that provides opportunities to obtain information about currently available infrastructure, grants, loans, and bond financing programs and options. And this is held every year. They're basically they have the meeting at various sites. And last year they had one in San Luis Obispo, but they're not meeting in Central Coast this year. So you have an opportunity tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. to join the meeting by conference call, and to plug into that meeting, go to www.cfcc.ca.gov. So I took a look at the flyer and the handbook, and by the way, they're available for download, free to you. And looking through the handbook, I found at least 7 potential wastewater and water recycling funding programs that Morro Bay may want to look into, and I know that we're already looking into the SRF loan, but there were 3 others that were offered by the State Water Resources Control Board this year, and I know we're looking into the Bureau of Reclamation's Water Smart grant, and I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about your discussions later on today. And then there's the California Department of Housing and Community Development, and also California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank. So this is an opportunity for all of us, including the public, to tune in tomorrow and to see what kind of funding sources are available and to hear some of the Q's and A's that are posed at that meeting. That's it.
What's that website? What's that website again?
The website is www.cfcc.ca.gov, and the meeting's going to be from 8:30 until noon tomorrow.
Great, thank you. Any other updates or announcements, I mean? Okay, and I would concur with staff. If anyone out in the public is interested, I think that's a great resource available to you and your neighborhood meeting or organizational meeting, whatever you have going, if staff is willing to come and answer questions, you can hear it directly from them, and it would be a resource I would recommend you take advantage of. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to public comment, and this is for items not on today's agenda, so more or less other than the project we're working on. Does anyone from the public have any non-agenda items to discuss? Please come forward, state your name, and welcome.
Thank you. My name is Meredith Bates. I live at 670 Napa. And I may be not speaking at the correct time, but you may be aware that there's a meeting simultaneously held at the community center regarding the goals for the city. And so I would like to be able to go there to give public comment. And so I would like to give my public comment now.
Okay, good excuse.
You'll buy that?
The only excuse.
So I sent you guys an email this morning. I don't know if you got it. Yes? So I was asking about, I was at the city council meeting on the 28th, and I heard there would be some executive summaries available that we didn't have already, and where are they and how can I find them? My second question is, I read in the newspaper this past week in the Tribune that there was 1 million gallons of treated sewage goes into the ocean every day from the old or the current wastewater program. And I hadn't seen that anywhere else, and I just wondered if that is really the case and how that might be impacting the environment. And on the minutes, maybe you can explain sometime the comment or the words bid, build, delivery. I'm not familiar with what that exactly means. Rob Levick talked about that. It's in the second paragraph of the minutes. It's not something I could find exactly what that meant. And I apologize for coming late to this party about all the water reclamation facility. I'm just learning and trying to get up to speed, so I might have some dumb questions that you guys have already answered 27 times. So I apologize for that, but please bear with me, and I'm trying to learn everything I can. The last thing I would have a question about is the One Water policy. I, again, am kind of mystified by what that means. I looked it up, and it seems like there's several different ways that it could be interpreted. I've asked, 15 residents in the community that I have been here a long time, do they know what that is? And so far, I haven't met anyone that's even heard of it. So I'm curious about that.
Just for clarification, did you mean design build or bid build? Because I'm looking at the minutes.
It says bid, B-I-D. It's in the second, B-I-D.
Design, bid, build. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. It goes with design.
Then, okay, I just wanted to make sure because I'll ask staff to answer your question. I just wanted the clarification. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Anyone else going to the city meeting on goals? No? Seeing none, then we'll close public comment. And I think, staff, if you could answer some of those questions, maybe starting with design, bid, build. Or
Sure.
Bid, design, build.
So design bid build is an approach for design, bidding a project out for contractors, and then having the contractors come bid the project or build the project. So that's different from design build, where design build, you contract with one entity who is the contractor and the designer, and they take sole responsibility for design and construction of the project. So it has to do with how you design and construction infrastructure projects. And then regarding some of the other questions, the executive summaries. So we're working through those right now. So I'll give an update. Yeah, we'll have the 2-page summary by the end of the week, and then we'll have kind of a little beefier 10, 15-page type handout similar to what we had done for facility master plan. They'll be available probably towards the end of next week.
And will they be posted on the
They will
website?
definitely, yes, thank you. They'll be posted on the website.
Could you give the website address?
Website address is www.morobaywrf.com, C-O-M. Oh, yeah. And there's a master water reclamation plan. There's a separate page where that information will be stored that you can find easily under the directory.
Okay, thank you. And then the amount of effluent that goes into the ocean, I believe that was a question. Yeah.
Yep, and that's about right. Currently, the combined flow from Morro Bay and Cayucas, around 1 million gallons a day, and that's treated and discharged to the ocean through the existing ocean outfall.
Can you explain
and it's
the
permitted. That's
yeah.
correct. It's a
Okay.
permitted discharge.
Can you explain the type of permit we have and to what level we're treating it?
So the permit, we have the city up till the last several years had a waiver that's called a 301H waiver, and it allowed the city to produce effluent and discharge to the ocean that did not meet secondary treatment requirements. And so it does meet secondary treatment requirements during some very low flows, but when the flows are higher in wet weather and that sort of thing, then it does not meet. It meets its own. It meets the requirements of this waiver, but it doesn't meet the standard state or federal requirements for ocean discharges from wastewater plants. So the city had a waiver from that. Rob, you want to jump in?
Yeah, just let me clarify that. And if I get it wrong, Joe's going to come up and correct me, our utilities division manager. We meet secondary requirements almost all the time, except when we have very high flows at the plant. We have a blending valve there that allows us to blend primary effluent. So when it's not raining or when it's not raining very heavily, we're meeting all of our secondary standards to discharge, even though our permit would allow us to discharge a blend of primary and secondary to the ocean. And I'll take the next one. One Water. It's just a concept to look at the resource documents, the water system master plan, the wastewater master plan, the storm drain master plan, all in one approach, so that as they relate to each other, you're taking advantage of because there may be some instances where you may want to use stormwater for water supply. Of course, you want to keep stormwater out of your wastewater system, so there is connection between all of those resource documents. The other thing that we are going to do with our One Water plan is chart the city's water future. So we'll be kicking that project off. Council is due to award a contract on that item at the second meeting in April to probably Carollo Engineers. They were the successful interviewee, and that's who we're likely going to recommend to move forward with. I think that answers the questions.
I'd like to follow up a little bit. It's been the 301H waiver has been more than just several years. It's been since the 80s.
Oh, yeah, I know. We've had
well,
through.
You said several years, it makes it sound. It's been decades. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that the Cayucas Sanitary District and the city of Morro Bay had spent quite a bit of money in investing into the plant, and the plant currently is probably operating better than it ever has since it began. And then the other the other thing that if people want more information, you can also get on www.morrobaywrf.info. That's our website with some of the concerned citizens, and there's some information there about options and other good information regarding that.
Okay. Thank you. You answered her questions, and she was able to get out of here on time. So great. Yep, she's gone.
I'll give her that information on the info.
Perfect. Okay, so moving on to consent calendar. We only have the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on March 7th. Any comments before I go to public comment on consent calendar?
I had a comment.
Okay.
again, I was late to the meeting, so it said that Dale Guerrero was abstaining from one of the votes, but he wasn't here.
That's correct.
So that probably needs to be amended then, the first motion?
Okay, I'm just checking the top. It notes he was absent from the meeting at the top. And then where are you seeing this? Oh, right here. Yeah, okay.
I believe that I abstained that because I hadn't been at the prior
Yeah,
meeting. for the
okay.
meeting, So maybe it was just the wrong name.
Good, yep.
Okay, and then on the next page, about a third of the way down, it said Dale Guerrero with the Environmental Subcommittee and Steve Shively with the Environmental Subcommittee had no reports. Was that you?
Yeah, I think that was Paul.
Was that you, Paul?
Paul, you must have had his name tag in front of you that day. Okay, do you catch those corrections?
That's it. Thank you.
I also have a couple on that same page 2 of 2. We had that, there was some dialogue going on with City Council and the funding for the lobbyist, and basically the minutes just state that Nunley responded to the comment, but I would like to elaborate that the response was that they were going to let the city manager know my concerns. So I think that should be added, so clarify that, close up that dialogue. And then also on that same page, on B2, where Jeff Heller stated he complained earlier about getting information on the in the public comment, if you reference the first page where Jeff Heller was questioning getting that information on cost. Mr. Livick responded, and then he checked, and he still didn't get that information. So we need to clarify how that website, make that website a little bit more clear, obviously, because people aren't getting the information they're needing.
I approve. I
Let's see
make
if
a
there's
motion
any
to.
public comment first.
What was this?
See if there's any public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Any public comment on our minutes from last meeting? No. Now you have the floor.
I move to make a motion to approve the minutes with the corrections brought up by Ginny Garelick and Richard Sadowski.
Is there a second? Okay, so did you get the motion by Shively and second by Gerlach? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Move on to our business items for today. The first is WRF-CAC subcommittee updates. I'll start with, I'm going to go in reverse order here because I know finance has something this go around. Engineering, do you have anything to present as an
No, we do
update?
not.
Okay, environmental. Okay, and finance, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. The Finance Subcommittee of this board met on March 24th, and we want to discuss the overall WRF project with specific emphasis on costs incurred to date and potential future costs. So basically, we have written up a report that states that we believe because of the perception that the costs are continuing to escalate and that maybe there's some other alternatives we haven't looked at, or maybe we don't fully understand the financial impact, we believe that it is the appropriate time for us to have, us meaning the city and this project specifically, to have an independent third party review the costs to date and make some recommendations if there is any other way to significantly reduce these costs. Now, I need to emphasize we are not talking about any kind of delay in our current progress. We're not talking about we think there's anything misleading in the costs as they've been reported to date. We believe this is a significant project with significant costs that needs to be reviewed by an independent third party. We have been working very diligently with MKN, Mike Nunley and Associates, and the city staff. We've developed spreadsheet templates to report the cost. However, those numbers are being gathered manually. We don't have an automatic feed from the city's current ERP or enterprise financial systems. So we believe that it would be appropriate for our committee to discuss this, agendize it at the next meeting, and then forward our recommendation in the letter that the three of us have unanimously on our finance committee, subcommittee agreed to. And the purpose would be to, as a high-level audit, review the cost to date, the city's overall approach. Is there a way of doing this more economically or cheap, more inexpensively, I should say? Are these costs and approach appropriate for a city this size? We get a lot of questions from citizens, all the studies that have been done, and a lot of that we recognize is perception, but that's why we think there should be an independent party reviewing this. And then include an executive summary. Maybe there would be later some follow-on quarterly audit findings. We think that would reassure the citizens that we're on the correct path. Again, to emphasize, we are recommending that the costs of this do not exceed 0.02% of the total maximum costs as presented to date. So that's approximately $33,000. That translates to $1 out of every $5,000 spent on this project. We would like, if we go forward with this, it be presented at a community forum and back to our WRFCAC, the results of such a study, and then obviously to City Council as well. And then one other example I will give is that in 2006 and 2007, when the citizens of Morro Bay voted to increase the sales tax 0.5% for fire safety, public safety, that vote, or ballot initiative, was contingent upon a citizen's oversight committee reviewing every expenditures annually for the measure, as it's commonly known, the Measure Q. That initially started at around the $700,000 in revenue. So what I'm saying here is that we have 5 citizens that look at expenditures of $750,000 a year now, because things are improving, up to $1 million. And when we compare that to this project, that's why we are suggesting independent oversight. Not city staff, not this citizens board here, not consultants associates, independent, unrelated to this project. So that concludes my comments. Our committee is available to answer any questions, discussion.
I just have one question.
Sure.
I can appreciate it, and I think, it may be a good idea to do this. I think you may need to narrow the scope a little, because when I read this, it says, develop new cost-effective alternative. They can't give new technical options because you're asking finance people to take a look at it. They could come up with new funding solutions of how you borrow the money or whatever the case may be. And right now we have a project that, quite frankly, the City Council hasn't stated whether we're even going to treat I don't even know what the true whole project is. And as I see this money keep going up, I could see certain things falling out of it real quick. And so I think it's a good idea. I'm not quite sure of the timing when you start it. Does that make sense? Because you might have somebody running around doing yet another study.
Well,
and then all of a sudden...
Absolutely. And I recognize maybe our laundry list might be a little all-encompassing, and we might not, our focus is on the finance and the cost.
No,
the audit, per se.
And personally, I don't know finance. I will stand here and state it, and so I can appreciate it, and that's why I have no problem with that aspect of what you're bringing up.
So just to rein this in and focus the discussion, the way that these advisory subcommittee updates are agendized is to receive and consider their updates.
Oh, okay.
They're not agendized to take action item at this time,
Okay.
and that's what, in effect, this recommendation is to provide
future
action
meeting.
item. So as what Barbara said earlier is she's asking us to consider bringing this back as an agenda item to provide city council with direction and advise them and ask them to potentially look into this. So that's what I would like us to focus on right now is if this is something we would like to have
I gotcha.
staff bring back at the next or a future advisory committee meeting, what we would like them to focus on their discussion, because I envision them probably trying to take a stab at this first, and then we would be able to deliberate if that was enough information or if truly a outside consultant needed to be hired, and then provide some guidance to city council on what we would like to see. Because again, we're an advisory committee. We cannot direct staff. We have no authority to direct staff to do any work like this. The city council does. So we'd be advising the city council that we would like to see some sort of outside audit take place. So we would be doing that at the next meeting if necessary. So that's what I would like us to talk about, is if this is necessary.
I'm sorry, I got the cart ahead of me.
No, that's fine. If this is warranted and something we would like to have brought back at the next WolfCAC meeting.
Okay. Well, I think it warrants bringing back at a future date.
Okay. Seeing some nodding heads then, so I think what we can do then to provide direction to staff is, and you guys stop me if I'm wrong.
Do we want to make a motion?
Yeah, just let's make sure that we have an understanding with what staff could bring back.
I do have a question, though.
You're not Mike.
I do have a question. Some of the things that are on here, I see that things that are generally conducted during what you call value engineering, which occurs later in the process. And that study is totally directed towards looking at ways to cut the costs, whether it's in construction or coming up with cost-saving measures. I'm wondering on D, address where the proposed costs are appropriate and reasonable for a reclamation facility for a city of the size of Morro Bay. They're meeting today to finalize and discuss the goals of the city, and the second highest priority for the city for the city is the water reclamation facility and water reclamation. And so we have to come together as a city and decide what is our goal. If our goal is water reclamation, and we're going through the process now, this is what it's going to cost to get to that point, and not lose track of that, as opposed to thinking that somehow that is it reasonable for a water reclamation facility for a city of this size. One of the things I've been thinking about is if you just take it to alternative one, to secondary, is the water, we have a couple of permitting agencies. Are we even going to get a permit from the Coastal Commission if we just take it to a certain level? Are we going to get a permit from the Water Board? Or are there going to be all kinds of contingencies that we're going to have to come back to and address at a later date that will have potential for incurring additional costs? So I don't know. I think that what you're asking here is important, but I think that we have to decide what are the goals of the city. And right now they're talking about it right now as the second highest priority is the water reclamation facility and to recycle this water. And so I think we all have to get on board with what the goal is.
Well, I could, to get some clarity, if we look back at the history and look back on the history, how we got here, we could reference the California Coastal Commission meeting of January 10th and item 23B, and that's people can look on the internet and find it on CalSpan. But what was said there, this is some of the concerns that we're having. What was said there when the mayor spoke before the commission was there was first of all, reclamation was always something that the Coastal Commission was keen on. And the other issue was that the estimates, this is what a lot of the concerns of the citizens. Back then, the estimates for the project, okay, that means, when they were talking in context of reclamation, was $12 to $20 million, and they just had a 218 vote, which they estimated was going to increase the sewer, the rates from $12 to about $20. And the mayor also talked about grant opportunities, okay, and this is going back a few years. This is going back 2013. So when we look at where we are right now at a project, now those estimates, to be clear, those estimates did not include the infrastructure to get the sewage there. That was just for the plant, okay, and then and land acquisition wasn't in the mix there. So that's a lot of concern of the citizens, is that, all of a sudden, we're ballooning from 12 to 20 million to now we're talking upwards of 41 million, but upwards of that. So I feel that, and then asking staff if they want to be audited, I don't know if that's prudent. I think that we as we advise the city council. I think what we need to do is, agendize this matter. Let's have an open discussion on it, and then send a letter to the city council. I don't, it's kind of a do loop if we're trying to police, the one being policed is policing themselves.
So let's go through A through F here and see what we would like staff, because I think staff can present a lot of these to us into the next meeting, and then we'll be able to determine if that is satisfactory or if we are compelled to advise the city council that a further audit is needed. And to me, this is more than just an audit, because it's some of these, an auditor wouldn't know project approaches, because a financial auditor doesn't know the Coastal Commission and what sort of permits are necessary and what sort of studies are necessary for those permits. So I think finding somebody to do this work could be cost prohibitive or impossible. So I'd like to give staff the first opportunity to do it at the next meeting. I think on A, they could provide total project costs to date for us.
Yeah.
That seems reasonable.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Give us a review of the city's overall project approach. We can revisit that again. It'd be good for the community to hear that. They've talked about design build and design bid build, and I think for me, I've heard from them that design build is a more cost-effective approach, but give them a chance to explain the path that they've chosen and why, and we can question if that's the most cost-effective or not. In agreement? C, I think, is here. It was mentioned earlier about value engineering at the time of design, so this might be a little premature. But you can discuss what's happening in the EIR.
What we could do at C, though, is we could walk back through, because Black and Veatch performed the facility master plan. We could walk back through the different alternatives they explored, just to remind folks they looked at a lot to come down to the ones we came down to.
Okay. And also, that'd be good, and potentially here, show us the cost of the plant with reclamation, without reclamation, and so we have the two numbers, because that is potentially a cost-effective alternative, is not implementing water reclamation.
Well, they do
with
cover
phase
that
one.
in this reclamation plan. Yeah.
We'll revisit it again next month with part of your presentation, please. Research on D here, research other communities for the size. And here I would like to add, because it's mentioned in the narrative, maybe go through and show a side-by-side of what Cayucas is proposing and their costs in Morro Bay, because it's not apples to apples. And people in the community are trying to compare the two communities like they're two apples, and they're not at all. And it would be good to see what Cayucas is proposing, and they still have to go through the permitting process and everything else like us, and their costs are subject to change. If you can find out what their contingency is, what their cost escalators are, because that's all relevant information to their number and our number, and being able to have the dialogue over why theirs is less than ours.
And what they're actually including in their cost estimate. and what they're actually including in their cost estimate versus what we're including in our cost estimate, which is everything and up through demolition of the existing plant and all the permitting and the reclamation aspect of it, which I think there's some missing items for the Cayucas plant, and so the number's looking, and it's a much smaller population.
Yeah, if that's possible, because I agree. And it'd be fun to fill in the blanks so we can arrive at what their cost potentially would be if they were the same Apple as us, which they are, because they have to pay for some of those costs as well. E, I struggle with this one because we're walking through a process to get a permit, and these studies are all necessary to demonstrate where the water is going to go if we are reclaiming it, where it potentially isn't going to go. We've been a part of all those studies so far, so I haven't seen a study to date that I've questioned. I think they've all been warranted, and in fact, some of them will probably help us demonstrate that reclaimed water in phase one might be cost prohibitive. So these studies have value whether the end product is implemented or not. I'm kind of struggling as to what kind of studies. Maybe after next month we could identify a study or two that we're questioning, but to have someone
I
look
don't
at every
see
study.
somebody preparing a financial report making decisions about which studies are truly needed, because most of them are technical by nature. They're not on the financial end. I could see where they may add some saying there's not enough financial reports, and that would be a valid statement. I could see.
Well, maybe the issue is that a lot of these studies have been performed before, and they're kind of been repackaged and presented again. Maybe that's kind of where the direction where we ought to maybe take a look.
Well, but the problem,
For instance,
like John
like the
brought up,
Basin
is you're not
Valley.
going to find a consultant who could throw together this budget report that can make those kind of determinations. That's what I'm kind of seeing.
I guess from my experience, I see all the studies as being reasonable and warranted and necessary in support of the environmental document to show that we've done our homework and that helped us come to the conclusions that whatever we're going to come to in regards to project alternative.
So are we okay striking E from staff's obligation next month?
We were thinking of that more, I think, at a much higher level, maybe in layman's terms. These studies are necessary without analyzing them, and the impact of not doing them versus, a city versus an unincorporated area has to do additional, maybe a couple paragraphs. We weren't looking at reevaluate every study.
Because I would just add, from having gone through this process before, we probably haven't done enough studies. We're going to find out when we go to Coastal, they're going to ask for more evaluation of certain components. And so I don't want to get distracted on this one. And
Perhaps one way to get the information out there would be to list all the studies that have been performed on the project and tell them and list what the purpose of it was and what it's going to feed into.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then F, I think that would serve as the staff report. There would be staff's executive summary and written conclusions would be in their staff report for next month. And this would be a good first step to find out if we're on the right track or if more investigation is necessary.
I'd like to say something about D that you mentioned, Cayucas and making sure we're dealing with apples and apples. I recently had a discussion with the president of the CSD, Robert Enns, and specifically asked him a real pointed question: if issues can be worked out, would Cayucas still be amenable to working with Morro Bay? And he said yes. And one of the things that we've talked about, and just so you know, Robert Enns has been the board president for years over at Cayucas Sanitary District, and he's also a contractor. And just to give people a little background, when I worked at Cayucas, we worked closely together on a lift station project with a contingency of 10%, and the final project was completed with a 2%, within 2% of that number. So when it comes to contractors, he knows how to sharpen his pencil. I feel that maybe, and we talked about like extensive issues like reclamation. Cayucas already has sewer easements in Morro Bay, and he was amenable to using some of those dedicated sewer easements that Cayucas owns for reclamation and then injecting into the Morro Basin aquifer. So I feel that maybe if we can have maybe the Finance Committee and meet with Robert Inch and of somebody of his choosing from the Cayucas board, have a little meeting together and then bring it back to this advisory board in an open discussion, and maybe even invite Robert Inns and a representative from CSD for the next meeting here.
I will just say I'm not interested in entertaining that. We've gone down that road, and for the listening public and those watching on TV, in my mind, that's nothing more than hearsay, that conversation. We, as the advisory committee, asked the city council to write a letter to Cayucas to try to participate, and they said no. So side conversations mean nothing. The formal process, there was a request, and they very clearly said no, they're not interested in participating. If we're worried about costs and going down rabbit holes, that's one that I think has been filled in, and we shouldn't pursue that at this point. But we're an advisory committee, so if others are interested in having the finance committee as a whole meet with them, that's fine. I don't think it's a wise use of our time at this point.
Kind of following in line with what Valerie said about alternatives, won't the environmental document need to speak to maybe the possibility of joining up with Cayucas as one of those alternatives in what they do?
John couldn't be here today, but I'll say that there's a discussion about what alternatives will be in the EIR. We'll provide input on that probably at the next meeting. I'd like to have him opine on that.
On that particular item, I tend to agree with John here because we're at a point, we've been going through this for about 3 years, and Cayucas has shown no interest in wanting to be involved with us. And all I see is right now, next week, we're doing the interviews for the proposal to lay out the force main, and I feel like we keep taking a step back, and I'm starting to feel a lot like Los Osos from the 70s to today in trying to get a project completed. For that reason only, I have nothing against Cayucas or anything else. I just see it as a moot point at least to me it feels like a moot point.
I feel that if there were going to be additional discussions with Cayucas, the city should be in the lead, and potentially a board member or two could participate or something like that. But I really feel it's the city's lead responsibility to coordinate with the CSD.
I got a question for staff. When you're going to be discussing your force mains, do you already have Caltrans easements for those proposals?
Not as of yet.
Do you know how much how much they're going to charge?
I've never worked for an agency where Caltrans charge for an easement to another public agency.
Okay, so you're anticipating getting those easements for free?
I would say so, yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to add another point to the environmental concern about the alternative with Cayucas. Back at the beginning, we were talking in a regional sense. Now we're building 2 plants. From an environmental perspective, it's like the old Alice's restaurant, 1 pile's better than 2 little piles, but from an environmental perspective, the regional approach, we're not even including Rancho Colina anymore. We're building multiple plants where we were previously currently doing 1. That's all.
Okay. So a couple things here. I think we need to confirm, staff, do you have clear direction on the next month's meeting and what that presentation would entail?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and then I would like to add, just make sure that the agenda provides for us to take action and advise the city council if necessary. So with that, is there a motion to approve direction to staff to bring that back next month?
You need a motion?
I'll make that motion to do that.
Okay.
I'll second.
To be clear, what's the motion exactly?
It's to bring back next month the items of A through F that we just discussed and modified, and to allow for us to discuss, deliberate, and provide direction to City Council on how to proceed if necessary.
And then I'd like to make a motion to have the finance.
There's already a motion and a second.
Oh, okay. Could I add to that motion and have the finance committee meet with somebody from Cayucas and discuss finances?
We'll see if there's a motion and a second for that. That's a completely separate issue.
Separate issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Our clerk, are we clear? And staff, are we clear? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, Richard, what would you like to propose?
I'd like to make a motion that the finance committee meet with representatives from the CSD to discuss cost alternatives for a joint venture with Cayucas at the location that the Cayucas Sanitary District proposes to build their wastewater treatment facility.
Is there a second? Okay, so there is a second by Jenny. Okay, and I think I'm going to do a roll call vote here so we know where we're at. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Sadowski?
Aye.
Commissioner Garlick? Commissioner Spagnola?
No.
Commissioner Leviolette?
No.
Commissioner Donnelly?
No.
Commissioner Shively?
No.
Commissioner Guerra?
No.
Chair Diodati?
No.
Motion fails.
6 to 2.
6 to 2, thank you.
Or 2 to 6, yeah, you're correct. Okay. Now that will move us on to item B2, program status update. Staff, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So since our last meeting, we'll briefly run through some of the accomplishments since the last meeting, and we're going to talk a lot about the Master Reclamation Plan today and give a detailed presentation of that report. We received and reviewed the administrative draft report summarizing modeling results from GSI Water Solutions, and so we're sending comments back to them this week, and our goal is to get that published within the next week, let's say, on the website. We've completed the draft Master Water Reclamation Plan. We've published that on the project website, provided hard copies at various public facilities. We presented the plan to City Council on the 28th. We've been working with Bartle Wells to review financing options for the rate study. I do want to give a quick update on this. We were anticipating having an admin draft from them of their rate study Friday. We have some preliminary information from them today, but we're not comfortable presenting that yet. We feel like we need to spend some time going through that, so it's a little bit behind. But the goal would be, one of the items we actually wanted to talk about. We have a presentation to the Citizens Finance Committee that'll be scheduled for their next meeting. I believe that's the 18th, so 2 weeks from today. And that'll be a presentation by Bartle Wells Associates. They'll come present the rate study. And then we also have a presentation to Public Works Advisory Board the next day. What we wanted to propose, based on the schedule with the rate study, is the possibility of a joint meeting between WRF-CAC and Citizens Finance Committee. And we thought we'd float that idea by you and see if that's something you'd be amenable to, so we could present to both bodies that rate information. So we coordinated with Ferguson Group, who's helping the city is on the federal lobbying effort, and also with Kestrel Consulting to go through the WIFIA program and to develop the letter of intent or letter of interest. And so we're going to submit that by the date's Monday that needs to go to EPA. So we're working through that this week. We've worked with the review committee with Valerie and Steve on review of the lift station proposals from the design consultants, lift station and pipelines. And we have interviews scheduled for those early next week. We've participated in conference calls with Ferguson Group and also with U.S. Bureau of Reclamation to talk about the Water Smart program. And that program...
Could you give us a quick feedback on that?
Sure. So part of their process is we submit a feasibility study, and in our case, we've done a recycled water planning study per the State Water Board grant program. So we submit a document that's called a crosswalk. And what a crosswalk does is it takes the requirements from their feasibility study, we put an outline together, and then we point to where it is in our document so we don't recreate a whole new effort for this. So we talked to them some about the project, gave them the big picture, talked to them about the importance of water recycling for Morro Bay, and then we're put in contact with their project manager in Sacramento, and so we're exchanging information with her and starting to put together what we call that crosswalk document to start that process. That's a process that takes a while. When you submit your feasibility study, or what we call this crosswalk document, it takes them a while to go through it, and in most cases, agencies have to pay for that review process. So there's, both for that and WIFIA. And so we'll keep, a lot of it depends on, in the case of WIFIA, that letter of interest being accepted and reviewed. And once you move into actually preparing a grant application, after you've seen if it fits their criteria, or the agency sees it fits their criteria, then they come back with a more formal application and also with an agreement for the agency to fund the review process.
So I know that they don't have a crystal ball, but I did read the president's blueprint budget, and did they have anything to say about that? I mean, I know that WIFIA came through, that the president recommends the WIFIA funding. Same thing with the SRF, that they're going to keep the funding, or he's recommending that the funding be kept steady state. For Bureau of Reclamation, it was difficult for me to figure out, but for Department of Agriculture, it looked like they're going to be cut for those rural grants. So were they encouraging it all? What are they hearing in terms of their budget for next year?
Well, I would say, regarding the Bureau of Reclamation, they're always going to be somewhat conservative. They have a lot of projects come to them. The review process takes a while to get funding and approvals, but they did express that it sounded like an interesting project, sounded like it met a lot of their criteria, but that's just talk for now. Regarding their budget, they really didn't do a lot of, their staff, so they're not going to give us a whole lot of speculation on where they think the budget's going. But we still feel like these are great funding opportunities, and one of the concepts too is you're going to have to pursue money from many different avenues, grants, low interest loans, etc. And they're going to be small pots of money. WIFIA only funds up to 49% of a project. Bureau of Reclamation, the Water Smart program will fund 25% of a project, up to, I think their limit's $20 million. So you're going to get small pots that you draw from. A lot of the information we put together for these is information we can put together for many programs. And so the goal is we try to put get as many of these opportunities identified and go after as many of the good ones as we can and just see where we land, because it depends on what everyone else is proposing too. Okay. Thank you.
I got a real quick question. Where is the most likely location of the lift station going to be?
It'll be somewhere in the vicinity of the existing plant.
Is it going to be inside the plant?
Well, A couple of sites were identified in the facility master plan.
Yeah, but
after
I mean,
10
what's
sites
your
were
feel
reviewed.
is what I'm asking.
Don't have a feel. It's going to be up to the designers, and they're going to work with Planning Commission and
Are they going to be working?
environmental studies, the CEQA work.
Okay, because are they going to be working with Cayucas on that? Because they own 40% of that property.
Yes, that'll be part of the process.
So you're going to be in dialogue with Cayucas.
Yes, and we're in dialogue with Cayucas now. There was a meeting a week or so ago between the EIR teams to talk about CEQA process and kind of get on the same page there.
I thought that the two locations we were looking at, one was along 41, and I think one was also on city property, but was it within the wastewater
One was
treatment
at the
plant or
existing,
the water plant?
where the city's water yard or courtyard
Yeah.
is now.
So
It was
those-
one location. The other one was right across the road from the plant, but in the vicinity of the existing plant.
And where isn't that part of that? Isn't that part of that joint property?
Neither one of those locations are on jointly owned property.
Okay.
The one on Tuscarora Road is within the right-of-way. The one, it's basically where if you're familiar with the courtyards, where the parks equipment building is, that's where it would be. And the city owns solely the corporation yard property.
Okay.
Is that generally right behind where is that right behind where the headworks are right now, on the other side of the fence?
Oh, probably a couple hundred feet to the east from there, kind of adjacent to the desal plant.
Can that facility be permitted by, like, the Coastal Commission at that location, since we've been denied a permit at the plant location?
They recognize that at some point we have to pump the wastewater uphill. So we have to have a pump station somewhere, and our collection system terminates at the low point. So they understand that there has to be a pump station to get the wastewater to the new water reclamation facility.
And it's subsurface too, correct?
Correct, and it will be constructed to meet our both FEMA's and our own city's flood damage prevention regs.
I think a good example is the park in Shell Beach, Spyglass Park. There's a lift station. There used to be a wastewater treatment plant there, and it's now a community park. And you wouldn't even notice there's a subsurface lift station that takes all the existing flows from Old Town Shell Beach and takes it to the Pismo plant. It's a beautiful community park. Any other updates on this section, Mike?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone from the public have any comments on staff's presentations on where we're at with the project so far? Please come forward. You have 3 minutes and state your name and welcome.
My name's Robert Walker. I'm not really sure where to talk because we are all kind of related, so my apologies if it doesn't exactly fit. I started this week by reviewing the meeting at the Coastal Commission where the permit was denied, and I was stunned by the mayor's comments about project costs of $12 to $20 million for a portion of the project. He made a big deal out of what we would call managed retreat. Well, we have 3 major components that are down essentially in the same location, and we're leaving 2 of them. And so somehow I just don't, I mean, I understand the idea that the lift station has to be there and we have to pump it up, but we use the concept to defeat one side, and it's all right if we accept it on the other side. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and I've heard, I hate the fact that I've heard so many pieces of hearsay, this and this and that, and that the land there is too valuable to have a sewer plant on it. But I thought the Commissioner, Steve Kinney, made it really clear that we're not going to put anything on there except open space. So this idea that we're saving dollars and stuff, to me, is a bunch of hearsay, and I think people need to be aware of that. So where are we now? We seem to be focused on 3 or 4 are alternatives 3 and 4 with the estimated costs of somewhere in the $166 million range. Using the city's guideline, that means somewhere in the neighborhoods of $166 per residence. That amounts to about $750,000 a month taken out of the local economy. True, not all of it out of Morro Bay, so it adds up to a lot. The median home income in Morro Bay, according to the census, is $51,000 a year. So you take a bill of $166 times 12 and look at the impact financially on our community. 12.9% of the community is living below the poverty line. We have to do something. I know I'm running out of time. I've made a comparison between the costs that I could find that are in the plan versus Los Osos. And the thing that really jumped out at me, their administrative costs of engineering and staff costs amounted to something less than 6%. But yet in our plan, we're using a number of 12%. So it's like, doesn't sound like economy to me. So finally, what I'd like to ask is, have we thought about what I would call a hybrid system? We're going to have reduced capacity, a reduced demand at the existing plant because Cayucas is backing out. The performance seems to be increasing. Could we upgrade and then pump the treated water to a facility where it could be upgraded for groundwater injection? That additional facility would be a lot less objectionable to people not wanting it in their neighborhood. So anyway, it's just a thought. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
So for some clarification, Mr. Walker, could you come back, please? We had a question for you. For clarification, it was asked, are you recommending to continue to build something at the existing facility?
I assume we ought to take a look at it. Yeah.
So there'd be a treatment structure at the existing facility?
Yeah. Oh, and if you really want to look at it, the presentation to the Coastal Commission, to me, was really biased. They talked about preserving the view, but the pictures they showed was some kind of an aerial view from the coast looking back at the plant. If you drive over there, as you drive down Highway 1, you can see the plant facility for 4 seconds at 55 miles an hour. You drive down the road from Atascadero, you can't see the ocean because of the dunes.
Okay, thank you. And what other 2 facilities? You said we're leaving 2 facilities there. What are we leaving there?
Basically, the existing sewer plant upgraded to take care of odor.
No. Earlier you said that we're leaving 2 facilities.
Desalinization, okay, and the major pump lift.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Well, I think some of those questions will be answered at next month's agenda item on costs and the bill, and that'll be good.
Chairman Diodati, Colby Kreutzer, Morro Bay. Simply to thank all of you for giving your time to our city to contemplate this difficult and complex issue. I just have a really general desire that I'd like to see Morro Bay be a model, similar to the way in the past we'd referred to Arcata's reclamation with ponding system and things like that. Rather than cut costs out of concern that I share, particularly with the previous speaker, about the burdensome costs for this project on the lower income residents and fixed income individuals, the cost is going to be substantial. By paring that down from the overall project, I think is misguided. I would like to see us really go for a quality reclamation system that would make the maximum use of our water to go towards being able to live sustainably here with the resources that are available to us, taking care of them, recycling them, reclaiming them, being conservative with them, even to the extent of things well beyond your purview here. Maybe a gray water system for some of the water flushing. This is huge expense outside the purview of this committee for sure. But to do something that's really well thought out, comprehensive way that we treat our water, and then see the needs of our citizens that are economically challenged as another component of that would somehow support them, so that it wasn't so onerous that this place becomes so gentrified that a large portion of our residents have to move away from here. So thank you again for your work.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, this is receive and file, so we'll do exactly that and move on to item B3, the Master Water Reclamation Plan. And staff, you're going to give a presentation and allow us to review, consider, and provide comments on it. So back to you.
Thank you. So for those of you who attended the City Council meeting, some of this may be some of the same information. I may go quickly through some of the upfront slides because you all are very familiar with a lot of the background information because you go back through the goals, et cetera, every month. But I want to introduce Eileen Shields, who was a primary author for Master Water Reclamation Plan, and she'll be here to present a lot of the technical information, and then also we'll both respond to questions. So we'll run through kind of a brief introduction, talk about overall project goals, because that really is what drove the cost opinions and alternatives presented in the Master Water Reclamation Plan and all the work to date. Give a background of the project. I might breeze through that fairly quickly because WRFCAC members are intimately involved in a lot of those activities. Talk about recycled water opportunities, discuss the alternatives that were analyzed in the Master Reclamation Plan, look at cost opinions and also qualitative evaluation of the different options, and then give conclusions and recommendations from the Master Reclamation Plan. So we have a number of major planning efforts going on to address community goals. And all these plans, including the city's One Water plan that they're getting ready to embark on, are all related to helping the city better use and manage water resources. So the project community goals that were adopted back a couple of years ago, and really first is produce tertiary disinfected wastewater, produce reclaimed wastewater cost effectively. One of the points we made is including reclamation as early as possible reduces long-term costs. If you feel you're going to go with reclamation at some point, every year you delay that, there's cost escalation, and that's a real impact to cost. Allow for on-site composting. We had concluded through a number of meetings, on-site composting is not really recommended, but participating with a regional hauler that can compost that waste was more cost-effective and less odors, and as a better deal for the city overall. Designing for energy recovery, designing to treat contaminants of emerging concern, so being ready for those regulations and new requirements when they might come out, and then allowing for other municipal uses at the water reclamation facility. So just keeping in mind that that allows some flexibility in site planning at the facility master plan. Ensuring compatibility with neighboring land uses. The EIR is going to analyze this further. This was a big topic of discussion when we went through the siting study work about a year ago now. Be operational within 5 years. So projects on schedule for wharf operation in summer 2021. And there's also the potential to construct the recycled water project concurrently if the city council desired to do so. So you all recall the project background. Really, this is since 2013 with the denial of the coastal development permit. We've gone through in April 2015, the CSD decided to pursue a separate project after there were some efforts together between both entities. February 2016, we did some initial site analysis a little over a year ago. We determined that the South Bay Boulevard site would be most achievable in a 5-year time frame when we balance cost and other logistical issues like the risk of getting the project through the approvals process and having a site that was buildable. And so in June 2016, council selected South Bay Boulevard site. Project schedule. Again, the City Council selected the site in June 2016. Technical studies took place between June and August. There was an EIR scoping meeting in August. MOU with the property owner at South Bay Boulevard, October last year. Draft facility master plan was released November 2016. Draft master water reclamation plan was released about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. EIR release is planned for August 2017, public draft, and then the EIR certification is scheduled for fall. So some other milestones, begin project design August 2018, begin project construction June 2019, and then complete the Phase 1 wharf improvements May 2021. So some things that we've learned along the way are that we can build a wharf at South Bay Boulevard site that'll meet the community project goals. That a total wharf project, including reclamation, is physically possible by June 2021. We've said in the past that depending on your recycled water opportunities, that may take another few years on the back end. There may be other reasons that you would phase the recycled water delivery part of the project, but it's physically achievable in 5 years. Could be permitted, designed, and built. And groundwater injection and extraction appears feasible. So the full WRF project could provide recycled water for groundwater injection to supplement the city's water supply and also provide water independence, meaning it could get the city entirely off imported water and the city would only be using local supplies. It could be a possibility. And some of the advantages of accelerating the recycled water component really could be potentially eligible for more grant money, since there's more money on the recycled water side than there is on the purely wastewater treatment side. Long-term construction cost savings, if you're going to recycle that water eventually, that there's not a financial incentive to delay it in terms of overall construction cost, but there could be other reasons. And potential reduction in state water use. So what we also know is the estimated cost really without any recycled water. So a secondary treatment plant discharging to the ocean, $124 million. Estimated total cost of the recycled water per this master reclamation plan varies, between $150 and $168 million, depending on what alternatives pursued. So let's see. In terms of previous findings from facility master plan and the various studies to date, we talked about the South Bay Boulevard site. We determined membrane filtration and UV disinfection are going to be essential for any of the reuse goals. Groundwater aquifer storage is available in Morrow Valley. We talked about that here a couple of months ago with Paul Sorensen at GSI Water. We do have the ability to offset state water deliveries by using groundwater injection of the treated effluent. Standalone equalization storage is going to be necessary for advanced treatment because of wet weather flows to the plant. The city's share of wastewater plant decommissioning costs are now fully included in the project. Regarding water independence, so water independence is possible. Indirect potable reuse or some form of potable reuse would be the highest and best use of the water. The majority of water demand can be met through reuse and local groundwater. And current and future costs of state water could be eliminated. And then the initial water and wastewater costs will be higher, but they could be less vulnerable to escalation than state water or imported water supplies, looking decades out into the future. And the wharf would be well positioned to meet all the project goals stated by the community. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Eileen and let her walk through the meat.
I got a real quick question.
Sir.
On your $128 million cost for just the plant, that include lift station infrastructure, force mains, building the plant, okay, and then the $168 million, that would include what part?
So that would include membrane filtration, then RO, ultraviolet disinfection at the plant site.
Okay, and real quick, the desal plant, right, with the water reclamation part, if you do the water reclamation part, does the desal plant staying at the same location, right?
I couldn't speak to that. But
that's
I don't
what
think
we're
they're
told.
I think I'll let Tom speak to that.
There's no current plans to move it, although in our recent coastal permit, they recognize that at the end of its useful life that it will need to get moved.
Yeah, well, we just upgraded it not too long ago.
Right, so we have quite a ways to go on its useful
so
life.
Like 20 years maybe or whatever. Okay, and so are we in conversation with when we're talking about recycling? We have to be in conversation again with the CSD because they own 40% of the outfall, and that's where we're planning on dumping the brine, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We've that's going to be one of the coordination. There are going to be a number of coordination items with the CSD.
Okay, and are they? Because I remember at a meeting a few years ago, they were really opposed to that. Now they changed their position about dumping brine. That
might have been related to brine from the water treatment plant years ago, and not brine from the water reclamation facility. I think there was it was a different issue then.
Yeah, but you're going to be using the desal plant and dumping brine out of that outfall, right? Because aren't we limited on how much what we could dump out of the existing power plant outfall?
Rob, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it's likely that we'll have to move our outfall over to use the wastewater treatment plant outfall. It's also likely that the CSD will need a brine outfall because when they move to their full water reclamation facility, they'll need a brine outfall. I think from what I've read on the past issues regarding brine, it wasn't so much of a technical issue, but a compensation issue. They felt that they should be compensated for the additional use of that outfall.
Okay, so, but we still need an EIR before we dump any brine because it's illegal right there. So you're going to have an EIR, a baseline to...
And that's going to be discussed in the current EIR for the project.
Okay, so that's part of the master water reclamation plan, and it's laced into that?
It's in the EIR for the project EIR.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Rob? I thought that the CSD was planning to continue to use the outfall at its current location. Are you suggesting that they're going to build a brine outfall in their community?
No. They're probably, I don't know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to use the existing outfall for discharge of their treated effluent, and then if they move on to a next phase where they need RO treatment, they will need to use that existing outfall for their brine discharge too. And we've had some preliminary conversations about that because you manage brine a little bit differently in an outfall than you would just regular wastewater. You need to keep it full all the time.
Okay. Thanks for the introduction, Mike. My name is Eileen Shields. I've been working with Michael King & Lean Associates since 2013, and since I've never spoken to your board before, I thought I'd just give a little introduction. I've also been very involved in the water reclamation facility project for probably about 3 years now through the siting study process and coordination with facility master plan, and now on this master water reclamation plan. So I'm going to try and walk through the technical aspects of it, describe what we looked at, what full opportunities we reviewed, why we didn't evaluate some of those potential recycled water opportunities further, and why we did select the feasible project alternatives, our comparison and investigation of those, and then some of the conclusions. So I'll start with the scope. The main components of the scope for the Master Water Reclamation Plan really were to review the main findings of the facility master plan that were related to recycled water. And so that included, the city's water demands, wastewater flows, treatment requirements for various end uses, and the cost estimates related to those various treatments. We also identified recycled water opportunities and evaluated feasibility of those various opportunities, and then analyzed further the recycled water projects that we deemed as feasible for the community provided some recommendations, and then finally did a quick review of the financing plan. So a little background here. It's a lot of words. The point really is to show that there's been a lot of work historically related to recycled water, both at the existing wastewater treatment plant and for this new water reclamation facility project that we've been studying for the past several years. We reviewed those historical studies, and they were the basis for gathering the potential recycled water opportunities. There were a lot of evaluations that were done as part of this current effort, including some, looking at reuse opportunities, looking at some discharge options and regulatory implications of those various discharge options. The city performed some hydrogeological studies in the Choro Valley and the Morro Valley, and they performed some groundwater modeling, which Mike mentioned in the project update, to assess the potential for groundwater recharge. We also looked at salinity in the collection system and did a source identification study and a control plan and recommendations for reducing salts in the collection system, which could ultimately reduce loading to the plant, treatment requirements, both for advanced treatment and really improve the effluent quality. And finally, there was the Water Reclamation Facility Master Plan, which this report relied pretty heavily on as the basis for the base treatment technologies and some of those costs. So some of the major components that we used from the facility master plan that informed this study, really there was some background that led to the major pieces of the project and those associated budgets, including budgets for full advanced treatment, which would be required for indirect potable reuse or groundwater recharge. So I just want to talk briefly about wastewater treatment. The facility master plan made some recommendations for the wharf treatment requirements, including advanced treatment. And really the point here is there's a lot of different pieces of the treatment process, and none of those would really change. There's a lot of different ways that you might get to tertiary disinfected wastewater, but the pieces for the recycled water project that would be changing in terms of treatment is really the advanced treatment, and it's both what type of advanced treatment is going to be required for your various recycled water uses and your end quality requirements, and how much treatment is going to be required. In other words, some opportunities might require a certain TDS effluent or salts concentration in the effluents or the treated water, and that might only need a portion of that full stream gets treated through reverse osmosis, and then you can blend it back to get to your end use. Some uses are going to require full advanced treatment or reverse osmosis on the entire effluent stream. Yes.
If I can just interrupt.
Please.
On this particular slide here, is there a point where the phase 1 project ends and phase 2 begins? Is it at the beginning of tertiary treatment or advanced treatment? Where's the dividing line between phase 1 and phase 2?
So say the city council moves forward with the goal of tertiary disinfected recycled water, your advanced treatment portion might simply be removed. So you'd still have these other components, including tertiary and disinfection, but you wouldn't necessarily have this reverse osmosis and advanced oxidation.
The reason I ask that is that phase 1 basically is going to be paid out of the sewer fund. Phase 2 will be basically paid out of the water fund. It seems to me that the tertiary treatment is the beginning of phase 2. Those costs would be on the water side as opposed to on the sewer treatment side. That's why I want to see a dividing line there.
Council has not made that decision where they're going to divide that line. That is a logical dividing point. That's probably where I would divide it, at the point where you were going to throw the water away. it becomes a water resource at that point. So that, I think, is a good suggestion, and it's probably the way that we will structure it, but we haven't made that final decision as of yet. Thank you.
Yes.
Just to clarify, on this table here, secondary, no recycled water, secondary, that's alternative 0. And then urban reuse is the tertiary, takes us to tertiary.
Yeah, I'm going to go through
And
all of those.
What that means is that you will be constructing the recycle line under the urban reuse, and then other things could be added on at that point to get us to IPR at a later date. Because under no recycled water, secondary only, there will be no recycle line constructed.
Right, and I'll walk through those alternatives in
Okay.
depth and what's
But
included in each of them.
You know,
but
the treatment and how it jives with your alternatives, is that correct?
okay, so if you were to do secondary only, and that's described as alternative 0 or the no recycled water project alternative in the master water reclamation plan, and I should add the caveat that that doesn't meet the city's current goals for the project of tertiary disinfected recycled water. But we looked at it to provide some sort of baseline for what would be required for ocean discharge. And I apologize now if I repeat myself because that was planned for another slide. So the alternative 0 would include this preliminary, primary, secondary, and biological treatment. And you would have some sort of disinfection. This shows UV disinfection right now, but the alternative 0 envisioned chlorination and dechlorination as needed for ocean discharge, and not necessarily UV, which would be more expensive typically to run.
If I could quickly ask.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about city goals of tertiary treatment. I'm talking about what the Water Quality Control Board would give you a discharge permit on. If you were to dump to the ocean, does it only need to go through the secondary treatment process?
Secondary plus disinfection.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Real quick, when you're looking at alternative, like with no recycled water, if you go back to the decision that the Coastal Commission made to deny the original permit, they had laced in their recycled water. So why are we looking at alternative? And the other thing that I'm bringing up is, when you look at a project in piecemeal, it's kind of like building like a car, one piece at a time, really expensive. Have you looked at like package units, that one small footprint, one shot deal?
Are you referring to like a packaged treatment system, say like you sometimes see for smaller developments, a container package
Well, like
system?
Santa Paula, like PERC.
That facility really is, I wouldn't consider to be a package. I mean, it's a lot of different vendors, a lot of different processes. It's together in common wall construction, but your design builders are going to take advantage of that, those types of decisions during that process.
Yeah, but like if you look at this process, you're doing, okay, we're going to go from there to secondary and then tertiary and then this. But I'm an engineer by profession, yeah, and like a mechanical one. And when you look at a project, you look at it holistically. I'm not a licensed one, but we didn't have licenses on DARPA. But what I was saying is that when from an engineering perspective, you look at it holistically. You look at it in product and as opposed to piecemeal.
Right. So, real quick, and Mike, you might have a response as well, but this is a representative of a process flow diagram, and as Mike mentioned, it's not necessarily separate parts. There are separate parts for screening and secondary treatment, but you might have that in the same, adjacent. Like he was saying, Santa Paula has a lot of common wall construction, but you still have to have your mechanical screens that are gonna do that. But
no, I understand that.
But yeah, there's a lot of I think the point is there's a lot of ways to get to tertiary treatment. There's a lot of different systems that could work, and the facility master plan laid out a couple of options that they viewed as being reliable treatment technologies that would meet the city's goals, and it was meant to establish a budget for the city to move forward with for budgetary planning. So there might be ways to, to do things a little bit differently than exactly how they laid out in the facility master plan, and I think the design build team is going to tackle that pretty assertively. Okay. So I guess with regard to the master water reclamation plan, the advanced treatment portion is going to vary between the uses and alternatives that we looked at by how much advanced treatment needs to happen, what size that unit would be, those units would be, and also what type. Some of them might require additional processes than others. So what is advanced treatment? Just as the name implies, it's a higher level of treatment that can be driven by either your end water quality goal, what the quality requirements are for that particular crop or that commercial use or industrial use, or it could be driven by the regulations. For instance, indirect potable reuse, Title 22 requires full advanced treatment, what they call FAT, full advanced treatment, and that's reverse osmosis, advanced oxidation, and UV disinfection on the entire effluent stream. Not necessarily that, it doesn't take into account, this particular groundwater is going to have, need this character, this quality, but it just requires the full advanced treatment on the whole thing. And it's used to remove dissolved salts, viruses, organic and inorganic chemicals, and emerging contaminants or contaminants of emerging concern, which you often hear referred to.
Is that what's required? You have to have Title 22 water to be able to inject into a drinking water aquifer?
Title 22 is the area of the Code of Regulations that addresses all of the different recycled water requirements, and it'll address everything from what you need for irrigating specific crops or for groundwater recharge.
Right.
And it does require full advanced treatment when you're doing injection. If you're doing surface spreading, it's going to be a different requirement if you're using perk ponds.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So the Master Water Reclamation Plan, like I said, reviewed a lot of different reuse opportunities, and I'd really like to walk through each of the opportunities that we looked at, each one that we considered, the main points for those, and then the main project alternatives that were carried forward. And I'll look at those in a little more depth. So one of the first we've referred to already was termed Alternative Zero, or the No Recycled Water Project. And as I mentioned, it doesn't have a supply benefit to the city. It doesn't meet the community project goals of recycled water, and as Mr. Sadowski mentioned, it doesn't address the Coastal Commission's requirement that there be a recycled water component.
Doesn't address the city's current LCP either, and I think that's what Coastal Commission had referenced to as part of their hearing.
Okay. Yeah, but it does provide what we anticipate to be the minimum treatment that would meet the requirements for ocean discharge. So it would meet the regional board's waste discharge requirements for ocean discharge. And so that it seemed to be the anticipated minimum project that could meet those regulations. And there is still a question about Coastal Commission and the city's existing LCP and how that would be addressed. And so that is important to note. The next opportunity is urban reuse. And this was reviewed really mainly for its potential to offset potable water use in the city. We anticipate that some advanced treatment would be required, meaning some reverse osmosis because of high salts loading to the collection system. But it would be less advanced treatment than, say, agricultural irrigation, mainly because of the salt sensitivities that avocados have, and that being the main agricultural use on Highway 41. The water quality would be likely driven by that. So that opportunity alternative was evaluated further, and I'll go through those details in a moment. We looked at agricultural irrigation because this was historically identified as the highest potential recycled water use for the city. But our initial outreach indicated general unwillingness to participate in such a program. And really, it would not increase the city's potential water supply because we'd be delivering recycled water outside of the city's service area, and those users don't receive water supply from the city right now. They're drawing on groundwater. So that option in and of itself was not evaluated further. So what if the city could arrange some sort of agreement to deliver recycled water in exchange for reduced pumping, say? Maybe you could enter into some contracts with a few of the larger landowners. Again, our initial outreach indicated general unwillingness to participate in such a agreement or such a program, and that project alternative would require a basin-wide groundwater management plan, which can be very complicated and add a lot of risk and potential schedule delays to the project. So, and in the end, there's really no guarantee that this would increase the city's potential water supply, because there's other users that you're not necessarily going to sign everybody up. And so if some users are pumping less groundwater, now there's more groundwater available for those users that are between the larger landowners that might be part of the program and the city's water basin that could now be drawing more water out and growing more crops. So that option was not evaluated further. The report also considered exchange of recycled water with agricultural users for riparian rights to withdraw groundwater. And this alternative carries a lot of the same concerns and conclusions, and it adds complex legal issues surrounding riparian rights. So we didn't carry that further in the report or the analysis. Whoops, here we go. So really the agricultural alternative that was evaluated further was exchange of recycled water with agricultural users for pumped groundwater returned to the city. It involves a recycled water pipeline to the agricultural users, and also a potable water pipeline from those users back to the city's system. And additional treatment for salt removal, reverse osmosis, would be required for this alternative. And initial outreach indicated some interest depending on the end recycled water quality and the costs. Oops, we go too far. We also looked at stream flow augmentation. It wasn't evaluated further because of regulatory challenges, concerns about commitment to stream discharge, and our initial evaluations really saw that there was limited feasible water supply benefit from stream flow augmentation. The study looked at indirect potable reuse or groundwater replenishment using surface application. What that really means is percolation basins. We looked at areas in the Choro Valley and the Morro Valley, and really the studies revealed a limited water supply benefit, especially during the wet years. So we did not evaluate that option further. We looked at groundwater injection for use as a seawater intrusion barrier. And again, this would offer a limited water supply benefit because you're setting up a seawater intrusion barrier, so you're losing a lot of that water that you're injecting to the ocean just by the design, really. So finally, we looked at indirect potable reuse or groundwater replenishment using subsurface application, and that really means subsurface application implies injection wells. Though this alternative has the highest mandated treatment requirements, we evaluated it further because it also has the highest potential water supply benefit to the city. So there were two alternatives, east and west is what they're termed, and they ended up being alternative 3 and 4. And after we got through the analysis and got some preliminary design criteria together, came up with the cost, we found that they varied very slightly. They came in pretty close to the same cost, around $167 million, which I'll go over further. So we're kind of presenting them here as one alternative, the indirect potable reuse alternative. The report also discusses briefly direct potable reuse. We didn't evaluate that further as a feasible project alternative because it's not currently legal in the state of California to do direct potable reuse. The facility master plan does have a more lengthy discussion about it, and I think a lot of the point there, a lot of questions on direct potable reuse is that should the city move forward with an IPR, or indirect potable reuse option, it's anticipated that that system could be upgraded if direct potable reuse did become legal in the relatively near future. But that would have to be addressed at that point. So in summary, the recycled water project alternatives that the report studies in depth, we really have 4 major alternatives. Alternative 0 is the no recycled water project. Alternative 1 is urban reuse. 2 is agricultural exchange. And then alternatives 3 and 4 are the indirect potable reuse. So walking through each one of those, the slide summarizes in brief the no recycled water project alternative. Again, it doesn't meet the community goal for tertiary treatments. It was evaluated because secondary disinfected will meet requirements for ocean discharge. It would consist of a discharge effluent through the existing ocean outfall. And so this map on the side shows little purple square here is the proposed water reclamation facility at the South Bay Boulevard site, and we just follow the outfall line. This is the western alignment that was recommended in the facility master plan, and this carries a total program cost opinion of $124 million. And I want to address briefly what the program cost means. It's not just the construction cost. We have included the major components, the lift station, the force main, the outfall line, the discharge line, connection to the outfall, land acquisition costs for the water reclamation facility, cost of the treatment itself, the water reclamation facility. We also have procurement of a design build team. We have decommissioning of the existing wastewater treatment plant, or the city's portion of that decommissioning cost is wrapped in here. Let's see what else is included. There's a allowance for permitting, environmental monitoring and mitigation, construction management, design, administration costs. So we're trying to capture the full program costs with this anticipated $124 million. It also includes a construction contingency of 25%. You'll note that 25% of it's not 25% of this 104.2, because as I mentioned, that includes a lot more than just construction. But that construction contingency is $19.3 million. Okay, alternative 1 is urban reuse. It consists of recycled water to urban irrigation and industrial uses. And we took a lot of the opportunities that were previously identified for urban and commercial uses in the city and looked really at what would make sense along the anticipated alignment of the force main and the ocean outfall, or the discharge line from the wharf. And it really came down to just a few users. We identified a potential water supply benefit of only 45 acre-feet per year. I believe that's about 5% of the anticipated recycled water available from the water reclamation facility. And so because of outreach from the county and also discussions with the city and city staff, we included a potential recycled water line over to the golf course. We would envision that it ends somewhere on State Park Road, and the county would have to install a lift station and pump up to their tank, because their tank on Black Hill is actually a higher elevation than the proposed water reclamation facility. So we wouldn't propose that the city pay for that pumping cost to get it up to their tank. So this alternative includes a recycled water line along the western alignment over towards Lila Kaiser Park and the high school, and then also one, as mentioned, over towards the golf course. It also includes a small advanced treatment system to remove salts and get it down to approximately 600 milligrams per liter of TDS in the effluent. So just a small side stream treatment would be required for that. And that, with a 25% construction contingency, comes to $153 million for the total program cost. Alternative 2 is agricultural exchange. And as mentioned, this alternative consists of providing water for agricultural irrigation. But in order to make it attractive for the city and make it allow for the water supply benefit to the city, those customers that were taking that recycled water would provide groundwater back to the city. To interest and to make it worthwhile for agricultural users, the Master Water Reclamation Plan anticipated that there would be a ratio of 2-to-1 of recycled water provided to those users to the groundwater that would be returned to the city. So again, additional treatment for salts would be required for salt removal, and the potential water supply benefit, assuming that ratio of 2-to-1 of recycled water to potable water returned, would be 442 acre-feet per year. So this shows the water reclamation facility down here. Recycled water pipeline would run along the eastern alignment just to avoid that Caltrans easement and Highway 1 crossing, since we would be heading east up Highway 41 in this alternative, and we come up to the upper Morrow Valley in here somewhere, and then a potable water pipeline coming back down to meet up with the city's system near the intersection of Highway 1 and Highway 41. So that carries a total program cost opinion of $168 million with the 25% construction contingency. So indirect potable reuse was examined to supplement the city's water supply. It would consist of groundwater injection in the lower Morrow Valley aquifer and recovery at the city's existing wells. 2 potential areas were reviewed in preliminary modeling, and that's somewhere over here near the Narrows and on the other side of the highway near Lila Kaiser Park and the bike path in here. Because of those 2 potential areas, we examined 2 potential recycled water alignments. One would be the eastern alignment, again, to avoid that highway crossing, and the other would be the western alignment, which would cross down here near Quintana, following that same alignment that was recommended in the facility master plan for the other project pipelines.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I am not an engineer, and I'm really interested in knowing a little bit more about groundwater injection. Could you just spend maybe 2 minutes and kind of give us an overview what that entails?
Physically, you mean? Like
physically, and the components they're going to be involved to move all this mass of water into the groundwater.
Okay. Well, I guess at a basic level, and I'm not a hydrogeologist, they know a lot more about it than I would, but at a basic level, you can imagine it much like the reverse of a groundwater pumping well, where you have a certain diameter pipeline that runs down and is drilled down in the aquifer. They do studies to determine where the water-bearing layers are, how deep that well needs to be, and there'll be a screen to allow the water to flow from those gravels and sands into that pipe. And for groundwater pumping or potable water well, you'd have a pump either sitting down at that water level or up above that would draw the water out. In this scenario, we would have the treated water come from the water reclamation facility down a recycled water pipeline, and you'd have those wells. You wouldn't need a pump at that facility. You'd just have a pipe in the ground, whether it's 6 inches in diameter, 8 inches in diameter, whatever they design it for, and you'd have the water connected. The water line would connect to that. There might be some valves to isolate it if you need to, maybe a meter to monitor what flow you would have there, and it would run into that aquifer. Since that aquifer is not a confined aquifer, meaning there's not you don't have artesian wells that are coming out of the ground by pressure. Since things can gravity drain, the creek can gravity drain into the aquifer, you don't need a pump at that well. It wouldn't be pressurized per se. I guess it is a pressurized system.
Part of what you've got to watch with it, though, the reason the hydrogeologists are really important, you got to do things like you got to make sure if you start putting water in the ground and it's pretty shallow groundwater, that you don't have it pop up in people's basements and a lot of that sort of thing. So that's a lot of what the hydrogeologists look at, is they do that. They do modeling to look at groundwater contours underneath the ground. So if you inject at this location, how deep, what's the groundwater depth look like from there all the way out to the ocean, to the creek, all the different places water can go.
So you'll have multiple injection wells if you're trying to put more in the ground that are spread out.
You likely
in
have
order to
3 or 4 of them, so you do a little
dissipate.
bit at each location for that reason.
Go ahead.
In the case, if you have, if we have another winter like this past one, we have excessive rain events, how does that figure into all this?
So part of what GSI Water did is they took the last, how many decades of rainfall information, and that's what
like
they
60,
modeled.
yeah.
Is they took something like somewhere around 50 or 60, I want to say 50 or 60 years of groundwater data, looking at every condition you can imagine that happened over that period, including periods when there was a lot lower, maybe perhaps lower use up Morrow Valley, and so it could have exacerbated that. Having a lot of water, really wet conditions down at Moore Valley. They looked at that to come up with these numbers. So in other words, they were satisfied that even during the wet years that you could still inject all that water in the ground.
One thing I would think is you're also pulling water out of the groundwater table because you're looking to pull out 1,100 acre feet a year in new water, so you're actually bringing down the water table at the same time, although it's not at the exact same location within the aquifer itself.
That's right. If you weren't drawing that water out, and they did some runs, assuming you weren't extracting it, you couldn't put much in.
Yeah, and I had a quick question on, since you're there on this portion of it, is, and this is my biggest concern because of the cost involved, but this is probably the option everybody in this town wants to see that are looking to recycle water, and I think this is probably the only one that makes true sense of any type, is the fact, have you been given any guarantees by the Water Quality Control Board they're going to allow you to pull 1,100 acre feet out? Are you going to, you do not have a permit in place to pump that, is that correct? I guess what I'm wondering is, you don't want to spend this kind of money without any guarantee that you're going to be allowed to even pull the water out of the ground.
We have a permit to withdraw 581 acre feet a year from the Morrow Valley. The regulations also state that any water we put in the ground, we have a right to.
Oh, okay, so you have that in writing. You feel comfortable,
in the
Rob,
code.
that you can make this happen. I guess that's my question.
That's
because-
based on what our water rights attorney has.
Oh, okay.
That 581 is about a 500,000 gallon a day.
Yeah, about half of what our water demand is.
Now, you guys are saying that you're going to put the water in at the same time pull it out. Isn't there supposed to be a separation in distance and time before you can do that? And
Yes.
Indirect potable reuse?
And they've modeled that. So we have, by modeling, have about 4 months travel time between the point of injection and the point of withdrawal.
This includes the west area, too, if you injected it there?
Yes, yeah.
Just to be clear, we had a few meetings ago that the best place to re-inject it was downstream of the Narrows and the Morro Basin, correct? That's where
Yes.
the study showed. And the State Water Board has a sustainable groundwater management program right now in place. Are you guys working with the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Board on that?
So the SIGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, is really in place for high priority basins, which high and medium, which the two basins in this county are Santa Maria River Basin and Paso. Choro and Morro are low priority basins. They're not even on their radar. We've talked about jumping ahead of the process and doing a Sigma-like process for these basins, forming a groundwater management agency, but we've only just begun the talks about that. We can do what we're proposing to do with groundwater injection and recovery without having a sustainability agency.
Excuse me, I'm going to need a motion to proceed past 5 p.m. for this meeting. The chair had to leave, family issue, so.
I make a motion to extend the meeting beyond the 5 o'clock hour.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
With that, I'll try and summarize this pretty quickly. I'll run through it. So the IPR option carried. We came up with a total cost opinion for the program of $167 million. Since we're talking about indirect potable reuse and considering the water supply, I want to take a moment to talk about the current water supply sources for the city. And there's really three main sources of supply right now. The city relies heavily on the State Water Project. They have an allocation of 1,313 acre-feet per year, plus a drought buffer. And what that drought buffer means really is if the State Water Project deliveries are reduced to between 36.5% to 100%, the city will still receive 100% of their allocation, that 1313 acre-feet per year. If it dips down below that, they're not guaranteed that full amount. Costs for State Water Project depend on use, but there is a large fixed cost even when the city chooses not to use it, or if they chose not to use any state water. And just for an example, in 2015, based on how much water they took from the State Water Project, their costs amounted to $2,100 per acre foot.
Eileen, on that point right there, is there a range? In other words, is there a year where there was a minimal per acre foot cost and a year where there was a higher? I mean, that was just 1 year.
Right.
Is there a low and high range?
In 2011, when we maximized one of the years we maximized our our state water demand, it was about $1,600 an acre foot.
The other main water supply source is the groundwater, and the city has wells both in the Choro Valley and the Morro Valley basins. For Choro Valley, they're permitted to withdraw up to 1,142.5 acre-feet per year.
Can doesn't the state have 1633 decision that prevents us from pumping out of there? From the Chorro Valley?
No, we're not prevented from pumping out of there. We have certain requirements that we need to meet.
Yeah, with the flow in the creek.
We need to
right?
install flow monitoring on Chorro Creek, so we have temporary flow monitoring right there right now. So anytime the flow in Chorro Creek is below 1.4 CFS, we can't use those wells unless we were to declare an emergency and advise the board. But like Eileen is about to say, the reason that's hard for us to use is creek flow is a limiting factor, and then also it is also high in nitrates out there in the Chorro Valley, so we need to treat that water before we get it into town.
And there's currently no treatment facilities for those Chorro Valley wells, so there's a limitation there as well.
Now, the $1,000 an acre foot on the groundwater out of the Morro Valley, that's the present cost if you pump it out of your existing wells as we sit right now. Is that correct, Rob?
That's the present cost for extraction and treatment.
I mean, if we're pulling that additional amount that we're looking to meet the whole city after we inject in, then we have to also figure the cost of the capitalization of the additional cost of the treatment plant on top of that. I mean, we're not going to be getting $1,000 an acre foot water in the future if we're putting it into the ground and pulling it out, because you got to capitalize the project that you put in place, correct?
Right. This slide is only discussing the current,
for the existing
current water supply sources and costs.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't include any potential future city projects like the recycled water project.
Just to follow up on that, am I correct in stating that currently that's the price for the Morro Basin, right? Morro Basin wells pumping, then they go through the desal plant, right? And then that's how it's treated. And my understanding, the desal plant can handle on full capacity, like 1,500 gallons per minute. Is that right?
If it's both salt water and...
Well, if you're just taking it out of the Morro Basin, let's just look at that.
I think it's 825 gallons a minute just with the brackish water RO system. If we turn on our saltwater pumps and our saltwater wells, it adds to that.
Okay.
But we don't have enough calcium carbonate capacity to actually treat that amount.
Okay, not the saltwater wells, but do we have enough capacity right now to treat the Morro Basin wells?
Yes.
At full tilt?
At full tilt, but we would run out of it's only generally half of our water supply.
Okay.
The other issue is our state water is a take-or-pay contract, so we could stop taking state water, but we wouldn't stop paying for state water.
But we're making an assumption today that if you went with this, you'd get out of the contract the next go-around when you could actually get out of said contract.
Actually, my reading of the contract, it really doesn't have an expiration date on it. It has a opener at when the local facilities bonds are paid off. That's our first opportunity to renegotiate with the county flood control district, 2021.
Can you just ministerially stop your state water? I don't know if you guys were around back in 1991. We voted on that project. In fact, it was ordered by the courts to put a special election on the ballot because the city council at that time wouldn't do it. And then a few years later, a referendum came about to get away from it, and that failed. Basically, state water is here because the people of Morro Bay voted to have it. Why are we just saying, let's just get rid of it? Don't you have to go back to the people and ask?
I think that's a question.
Just up in the courtrooms.
That's a question for our legal counsel, and I know they're looking into that issue right now.
Okay, because it took a while to get to where we are. It just doesn't go away that easily.
I've heard that from citizens too. That seems to be more knowledge out there. So.
Okay, so going on with the current water supply sources, the city also has the ability through their desalination plant to pull in and treat seawater for desalination, and currently that's used just on an emergency supplemental basis. The desal plant has capacity for up to 645 acre-feet per year. I've got that underlined because it's really limited by water quality and the well capacities. The seawater well capacities are currently under investigation, and that's approximately $1,600 per acre-foot. Real briefly, it's kind of difficult to see this map. I apologize for that. This is a map of the California State Water Project, and if you were to see it better, really what this is showing is it's a very complex system of aquifers, pump stations, pipelines, aqueducts, canals, treatment facilities all up and down California. It's pretty massive. And really, the main point is that it's bringing water from Northern California down past our area. We've got a pipeline and treatment plants associated with it down to Southern California.
There really is two water projects that are commingled in the Delta and in the pumps. The State Water Project was originally the Feather River Project, Oroville. The rest of them are Central Valley projects, which is of greater magnitude.
Yes,
they commingle waters at San Luis Reservoir
and through the Delta,
and they share a lot of facilities along the way. But one particular one, our origin of our water comes from the Feather River only.
Right, Lake Oroville.
Right.
Okay, and I will mention if any of you are interested in learning more about the State Water Project, is it? Rob, you know the website. I had it on the tip of my tongue.
Sure. It's the county has a great website. It's slowcountywater.org. And if you look under major projects and click on State Water Project, it gives a brief synopsis of the state water and what's currently going on with it, all the contracted cities that are and agencies that are on the State Water Project in the county. Gives a little blow-up map and shows our more local coastal branch section that comes over pipeline from Polonio Pass Water Treatment Plant, which is near the San Luis Kern County line off of Highway 46, somewhere out in that area out there.
Okay, thank you. So getting back to the alternatives that were analyzed in the Master Water Reclamation Plan. We've got the 4 major projects here, and they're ranging from $124 million, including a construction contingency of 25%, up to $168 million or $167 million for indirect potable reuse. We should also consider annual costs. Those were the total program capital costs. The report also looked at the estimated operations and maintenance for the water reclamation facility and for the recycled water project component. And we considered some estimated annual water costs and came up with this table. From the top to bottom, we've got the annualized program cost on the top row. And that's looking at, what the city's responsibility would be per year, assuming that the project was financed through SRF at a 30-year loan and a 3% interest rate, which we're estimating as a reasonably conservative interest rate. They're lower at this time. We've got annual operation and maintenance, and that's both for the water reclamation facility and the recycled water project component, and estimated annual costs and for water, so this would be for your water supply. So the no recycled water project cost assumes, let me take that back, all of the alternatives assume an annual demand of 1,200 acre-feet per year. That's higher than the city's current demand, which is closer to 1,100 acre-feet per year. But it's looking at your future potential build-out conditions. It assumes state water project costs, some future state water project costs estimated at $2,200 per acre foot. Groundwater pumping is estimated at $1,000 per acre foot, and desalination at $1,600 per acre foot. The no recycled water project alternative assumes that the city continues taking state water project water at 1,200 acre feet per year and $2,200 per acre foot. And then it gets reduced as you go down. The urban reuse is reduced just slightly because of that 45 acre foot per year offset that we're estimating from providing recycled water instead of potable water. Ag Exchange assumes that that potable water that's returned to the city would be returned at no cost to the city. And so that's reduced. I think it's I'm assuming the rest is made up by state water project water. And then indirect potable reuse assumes no longer receiving state water, no longer having that state water project cost. And the water is pumped and treated at the Morrow, the existing wastewater or the existing water treatment plant, and there's some makeup brought by desalination depending on what kind of optimization and blending scenarios can be worked out at the existing water treatment plant.
On your O&M cost for the no recycling option, what are we paying for O&M cost currently at the wastewater treatment plant and the collections?
I might.
I think Joe Mueller can answer that question.
Yeah, currently we're just under $1 million annually for operations and maintenance. And that cost this year was
Okay.
So I had a follow-up question. That's a great table. It's not in here, though, is it?
I didn't see it in here. We developed that for the presentation, but that's something we can include in the final report, and we can also we'll post this presentation. I think we posted it as part of the council meeting the other day, but we can, I mean, it's
I would
read
definitely
those
bottom numbers.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so annually, we're looking at a spread of just a little over $2 million. And the no recycled water project, we're estimating the total annual cost at $10.3 million. Urban reuse at $12.1 million. Ag Exchange is just slightly higher at $12.2 million. And the indirect potable reuse is estimated at $12.4 million per year.
So what I wanted to follow up with, because Richard had a question about the O&M costs, the current O&M costs for our wastewater treatment plant. I'm concerned about once the plant's gone and we've got a new plant, I'm concerned about the collection system. And I'm curious, do you have that broken out, Rob, right now as to how much we're spending on repairing our collection system? Because that will have to be added into, right, the cost in the future.
I know I don't have that number with me right now, but it is in our existing rate model. So it is already considered in our existing rates.
Okay, that's where I was coming
Collection
from.
system maintenance, collection system operations is part of our existing rates, and that won't change with, change minorly with the new lift station, but the repair and maintenance of the existing system won't change.
So the new rate study is going to include this information, is
Correct.
what you're saying? Perfect.
Just to follow up, you don't expect more cost for collections with the added infrastructure at all?
That's why I corrected myself. I do anticipate slightly higher costs with a new lift station. There will be more energy costs in the collection system and lift station maintenance with the new lift station.
And we don't know that number yet?
I believe it's in the facilities master plan. But
The O&M, the estimated annual O&M listed here would include the cost for pumping at the new lift station and repair and replacement allowances for those facilities.
Okay, so your 1.4 million is including the new lift station, the 6 pumps, the maintenance, and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
Getting it to the new location.
Yes.
And that's 1.4 million if we don't treat anything. That just
Yeah, that's based on facility master plans costs,
Okay.
estimated costs there. Okay, so besides costs, both capital and annual O&M costs, the master water reclamation plan also looked at the alternatives based on qualitative evaluation criteria, and those criteria were based on the project community goals that were adopted by the city. And we've got 4 major criteria that we looked at: potential city water supply benefit, which is tied to production of high quality and cost-effective recycled water, pipeline lengths, which, of the different recycled water alternatives, and that ties back to neighborhood compatibility potential, impacts during construction, energy savings also, and costs there. Land acquisition, again, has to do with neighborhood compatibility and potential to risk delays to the project schedule. And then finally, reliability. And that reliability criteria is a little bit vague. It really, what we're trying to consider is the potential challenges to a project which could cause delays to the overall water reclamation facility project. This table very quickly summarizes the qualitative ranking of the various alternatives. You'll notice alternative 0 is not included here because it wasn't ranked on the same, it wouldn't have rankings for water supply benefit or pipeline length even because it doesn't have a recycled water pipeline. But the master water reclamation plan concluded, it gave a ranking of 12 to the IPR alternatives 3 and 4. They vary slightly based on pipeline length and land acquisition and ease of land acquisition or perceived ease of land acquisition. And then agricultural exchange ranked the lowest with a 7, and urban reuse was a little bit higher at 8. We ranked them all on a scale of 1 to 4, with 1 being the lowest and 4 being the highest or most favorable. So I'm going to walk through the basic conclusions and recommendations from the plan. We found that IPR provides the highest potential water supply benefit, estimated at 900 to 1,100 acre-feet per year. 1,100 is near the city's current water demand. Optimization at the existing water treatment plants really has the potential to maximize that benefit, and that optimization would be looking at ways to increase the or reduce losses that occur through the treatment plants, maybe some different calcium carbonate treatments. We look at the potential to blend or look at different anti-scalants. Blending, in other words, you might not have to treat that full water supply to meet the water quality that's required. The city could really significantly reduce or eliminate reliance on imported water if IPR alternative were pursued. The least expensive alternative is the no recycled water project, or alternative 0, followed by the urban reuse alternative. But again, alternative 0 provides no water supply benefit to the city, and alternative 1, or urban reuse, provides the least at 45 acre-feet per year.
Can I just ask a question here? The other alternative, to be clear, if the Coastal Commission can't make us move the wastewater treatment plant off the existing site. They only have jurisdiction if we build something new. So that alternative, it'd be interesting to note that, like one of the speakers said, a hybrid system to be able to do the recycling part, and since that we're doing it at downstream of the Narrows, which is basically at Highway 1 and 41, it would seem that maybe that should be at least looked at, because there's no agency that can force you to move a wastewater treatment plant.
One of the challenges, though, is you've got a plant that's over 60 years old. Some significant work needs to go into renovating, rebuilding, and for some of that work, you are going to have to go through coastal commissioning, coastal development.
Well, not for maintenance. I talked to somebody. I've talked to Robert about that, and he's been involved in this. Robert Enns has been involved in this for a while and been a president for a while. And he told me, you can chrome plate this plant for $11 million. And in fact, since we've moved to ferrous chloride in our collection system and in other areas, the wastewater treatment plant is running at this point in time, and they've invested from the maintenance management plan. The current wastewater treatment plant is running, my understanding, at optimum. Yeah, I would like to hear from you. I got a question for you as well.
And I agree, the plant is running very good right now, and I got to give a lot of credit to our existing staff and the previous staff that came before them. But as Mike mentioned, the plant is 60 years old. The plant has been hot rodded many times, as I call it.
Okay.
You know, it's past capacity. A lot of the systems have been rebuilt 5-6 times. And reused. You know, we're using for disinfection, we're using a old primary clarifier that's been turned into a chlorine contact chamber. I like to liken it to, you got a 60-year-old car out there, you're asking to drive it every single day at 80 miles an hour on a freeway that it was never ever designed to do. So, you know, is it fun to drive an old car? Yeah, on the weekends. You don't want to rely on it 24/7.
Okay.
You know, you're just asking. It's not a safe process. Sooner or later, you're going to have a failure, and it's going to be a big failure.
Real quick, while you're there, how much electrical power does the current wastewater treatment plant use about?
I don't have that information on the top of my head.
Okay, and then
it's a relatively low power consuming plant, yes, because it's an old technology plant.
Okay, and then this new lift station that we have to use and to pump, they're talking about 6 pumps, I think, and then you have the cycles and stuff. Generally, about how much power are we going to be using that in relation to what? Like, make it relative to what our existing plan is. Is it going to be like 10 times more power, 20 times?
The lift station itself will probably consume close to about the same power that our existing plant takes.
Okay.
Rob, I have a question. For the 2015 rate study, and I think that at that time, the location was out of Petrolina, and we were, I think, at a $7 million plan. And was that based on just taking it to phase 1, or did that include phase 2 at the time?
It did not have a recycled water component with that phase. That was really too far out for the rate study to look at. It gave some rough projections on what it might do to overall costs, but it didn't try to project rates at that point in time. So, yeah, and it was, we were still partnered with Cayucas at that point in time also. Just want to add one thing to the existing plant. It only has one secondary clarifier, had it. Eventually, that secondary clarifier is going to need some work on it, and we cannot meet permit limits without a secondary clarifier.
I got a quick question. How far in time are we away from awarding a design-build contract on the plant itself? Is this a year out or less than a year out?
About a year out.
About a year out. So at that point in time, we'll have a pretty good handle on exactly what this thing's going to cost. Right now, you're throwing a lot of contingencies in your numbers, and you're being conservative. I give credit to that, but I could see some of these numbers hopefully coming in lower, because the numbers I see now scare the hell out of me a little bit. So that's why I'm wondering, in about a year's time, we'll have a pretty good idea of truly what this thing's going to cost, because I think you're doing design bid build on the lift station and the other one, so that you'll have to wait till you actually put that out to bid to find out the true construction cost. But the design build, you'll know from the get-go approximately where you're going to be at, correct, in a year's time?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, part of that, some of the discussion about value engineering and looking at ways to bring project costs down, you're at a very preliminary point in this project.
Right.
And part of that design build process is encouraged to have the design builders propose.
Exactly.
And they propose and they give you an indicative construction price or guaranteed maximum price, however you set it up. And you know when you start the project, based on what they've laid out, this is what it should be.
So the only factor we wouldn't know at that point in time is on the design bid build of the actual lift station until you put it out to bid.
Well, the goal would be we want those running in parallel because your design on your construction on your lift station can start a little bit behind, but we'll have your construction can a little bit behind the construction of the wharf.
Oh, okay.
But your design is going to be very far along at that point, and so you're going to know a lot about the design. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's the cost opinions designers may come up with, and where the contractors actually come in, it's kind of hard to crystal ball at this point too, because it depends on how busy they are, et cetera. But we should know a lot more about cost at that point. Contingencies are to account for what you don't know yet.
Right.
It's not for things like site demolition. We've got an allowance for that. We've got allowances for everything we can put numbers to, but it's for something that might come up that's not anticipated. So that contingency, we really recommend keeping it high, but as the project moves forward, we try to pull that down, or as unknowns pop up, things we didn't anticipate or surprises or whatever, you pull out of that contingency and you leave the rest of the contingency alone.
Yeah, because for me, it's very hard to try and support a $160 million project on a town this size, especially in light of if we're not going to be able to get out of some of the contract requirements with state water, because we're paying a lot of money on the fixed side of state water, and that may not happen until 2021, but you're not going to be creating new water till 2021 anyway. So I just really worried about we're still in the state water having to pay those fixed costs, and then we're trying to capitalize this whole project at the same time. That could be a real killer.
Regarding state water, part of the effort that's going to go on concurrent to this is your One Water plan, and you're going to look at that water supply from a holistic perspective. But with state water, remember, there are a number of options there. There are other agencies within the flood control district, San Luis Obispo, that may want that water.
Correct.
Your debt service gets retired in 7 years, but there are other entities that want that water. That creates opportunities for you. If you did not want state water, there are other entities who would likely want that, and DWR has a process for.
Yeah, I just don't want to be carrying the debt service beyond that date, and they're going to lock you into a new debt service, trust me, in 2021 for the new projects that'll be going online with state water, and that's the part that worries me a little bit.
The thing that you always talk about on state water, I've asked this before, is that it's always going to go up, but we're going to pay off the capital cost of local projects here, in 4 years or so? Our payments will go down, will they not? To less than $1,600 an acre foot, if you want to work it out that way. Whereas I heard on the city council meeting the other night when you presented this, that your recycled water would be as much as $2,700 an acre foot. I don't understand why you're trading out such very low cost water for a very extremely high cost alternative. I just don't get it.
My thought was that they're going to tie you into all the new infrastructure projects on the state water.
Well, that's part of their water independence ideas, is doing those things, right, at the state level. What they're going to do to get around the Delta is part of their idea towards water independence.
Yes,
because there's a lot of carriage water lost through the Delta to get the right amount down to Tracy to pump out. So a lot of it just goes through up the Golden Gate right now as carriage water that's lost in the idea of the new project is the water independence to get it through the Delta without losing those carriage waters.
Right. And it's a big project.
The tunnels.
Yes,
The tunnels.
Rob, would it be fair to say that, if we had stayed in the Charo and we had, in the Morro Valley, somewhere closer, that with Phase 1, Phase 2 would probably come in at about the same price as what we're going to be paying for secondary at the current at the South Bay Boulevard location, about $120 million. Do you think our costs have, I'm wondering how much our costs have increased by moving that far out with our piping costs and then sending it back? Roughly kind of in that general direction, because it seemed like it was, before we moved, it was more, the two combined was around $120 million.
Depending on where you are in Morro Valley, part of the estimates we originally had, we hadn't included the full recycled water system.
We know about the $70 million,
Yeah.
but if you were to add on, if we had stayed closer, basically, are we looking at a similar cost for what we're going to get now, only treating it to secondary? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, what we've estimated is it's probably in the neighborhood of about a $14 million difference when it's all said and done.
14 by moving?
Yeah, but that's on the high end because the difference is just some pipeline costs. There are things that came out of the facility master plan, like the need for the equalization storage, the cost for the decommissioning of the plant site. There were other costs that came out of that weren't anticipated with those comparative site analyses, because all they were intended to do was say this one's $8 million more, this one could be $15 million more, but we knew at the time we didn't have the totals yet because we needed to go through this master planning.
Well, that's important.
Is that including the pipeline to run the indirect potable water back to the Narrows area?
Yeah, pretty.
Okay, so $14 million covers pumping it all the way, but it doesn't cover the energy cost on a yearly basis that you wouldn't have as a result. So you'd have a lower O&M cost every year as a result.
You keep saying that the increase in cost from moving from one location to the other one is attributable to the pipelines, but your total cost for pipelines for where we are now is just over $14 million. So was there no cost to get up to New Rancho Colina, and now all of a sudden there is? In other words, I don't see the numbers adding up, because you just say $14 million off the cuff when that's really about what's going to cost to do it anyways.
I think you said that was the additional pipeline cost.
No, I'm just saying that the pipeline cost for this project where we're going to move to is going to be about that.
Well, but too, keep in mind, if we were up Moore Valley somewhere, we would save roughly, about 2 or 3 miles of pipeline?
About 2.
Somewhere in that neighborhood? Because the pipeline, your $14 million you're talking about now, that's just the pipelines. That's the pipelines to get over to the plant and back to the outfall. That doesn't include the recycled water, because we're bringing that over too. So by the time you factor all that in, it became somewhere between 8 and 14 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's a cost difference between those two locations.
Should I push through I think I have 4 more slides. Excuse me, my microphone wasn't on. So I have about 4 more slides that has the conclusions and then recommended next steps from the Master Water Reclamation Plan. It notes that capital costs for Ag Exchange, Alternative 2, and IPR are similar. IPR is a significantly higher water supply benefit if a higher exchange rate is not possible for the agricultural exchange alternative. And it's important to note that Ag Exchange alternative relies on successful contracts and negotiations with the landowners, and that just adds uncertainty to the project. So the plan recommends recycled water. The recommended recycled water project was indirect potable reuse alternatives 3 or 4 because it best fulfills the council adopted community project goals, producing reclaimed water, provides the highest and most reliable potential water supply benefit of the alternatives. It may allow the city to reduce or eliminate reliance on imported water. And if a recycled water project is desired, there's really potential for significant savings if that recycled water project is implemented with the overall WARF project. So our next steps in the project that are related to the reclamation, we have the sewer rate study update anticipated for this month. Mike talked a little bit about that earlier. The draft EIR is planned for August. We're doing ongoing consultation with the Water Board, and we'll start talking to them about this alternative. If IPR, if the council looks at moving forward with indirect potable reuse, the plan recommends doing some siting studies for those injection wells, and there will also need to be some pilot studies for injection and extraction, really to refine the preliminary modeling assumptions and numbers, looking at how many wells, injection wells, are going to be needed. Is it 3 or 4 or 5? What size would they need to be? And then the final environmental impact report is anticipated for fall of 2017. After or with that pilot study for injection and extraction, we do some groundwater modeling update to look at what the refined travel time is for that water and meeting regulations. I talked a little bit about optimization at the water treatment plant. We anticipate that the One Water Plan would study that optimization there, and that's really to improve recovery and production of water at that treatment facility. And then finally, there'd be the design of the recycled water system, which would include the advanced treatment, injection wells, pumps, and pipelines. So that's all I have. If you have additional questions or comments, we'd be happy to try and answer them.
My turn. When I first got on this council, or this advisory council, there was an element that I saw that recycled water would go to ag. It was like 700 acre feet a year. Was that part of the city's local plan? And has that been done away with? What's going on?
I believe that was part of the local coastal plan. Included around, was it 600 acre feet a year, 700, something like that, for agricultural and municipal use. Is that right, Rob?
Yeah, it doesn't specify for agriculture. It says offset, basically, water demands in the Morro Valley. So agricultural and or municipal uses.
I believe your policy 80.1 says the 770 acre feet a year for agriculture and golf course purposes. And that's what the Coastal Commission has blessed.
And then there's another section in the LCP that talks about municipal uses. So
am I hearing that pretty much water for the agricultural and reuse up 41 in the Morro Valley is pretty much off the table now?
We're looking at the highest water supply benefit for the city of Morro Bay is what the path we've gone down, based on input from direction from City Council.
So will this project be found inconsistent with that policy 80.1 then?
Well, it's a really good thing that we're rewriting our LCP and general plan.
So
don't you have to comply with the rules that already exist rather than changing the rules to try to get it to work? I mean, don't we have to comply with the current LCP general plan policies blessed by the Coastal Commission right now?
We do have opportunities to modify our LCP and general plan along the way as situations change.
What are you going to tell the Coastal Commission why you no longer want to comply with this policy for agriculture use?
Because we're going to use the water for its highest and best use, which is offsetting municipal water use.
Okay. One more.
Personally, I don't see irrigating golf course as the highest beneficial use. That bothers me. Personally, I don't see using the water for irrigate golf course as the highest beneficial use. You know. So.
Wasn't there a study done that says that the groundwater that you guys pump out of is recharged through agricultural runoff and rain events? Has that changed now too? I think that study was in 90, it was done by Cleath, 95, something like that.
I don't think any of the recharge, any recharge discussion really wouldn't have changed. going back to the question about the LCP, I mean, one thing to consider, we have been in constant communication with Coastal Commission. They understand the alternatives the city's looked at. They'll be providing formal comment on the EIR as we're moving through that process. Providing recycled water for indirect potable reuse is consistent with a lot of Coastal Commission policies. So I wouldn't anticipate you're going to see a challenge with Coastal Commission. That's from the discussions we've had with Environmental Science Associates, who's doing the EIR work, also with John Rickenbach and his work and his communication with Coastal. We don't anticipate this being a challenge with them. But the steps we go through with the city's in the LCP process now, general plan, that alignment with the water reclamation facility is going to be important. We don't see any real conflicts between those right now.
I got one more thing. Back in Appendix C, I told you out in the parking lot, but I'm going to tell you again. Table 6, number 97, you have down as Dwayne Davis. That's me.
Yep.
And I've emailed you twice now over the years. So
we'll get
that changed. And also, you have the irrigated wrong. It's supposed to be 18.39, not 14.
Okay.
And then it's 2.5 acre foot per year per irrigated. I noticed you did the multiplication wrong in another table. I use roughly about 50 acre feet a year.
Okay, we'll look at that.
Okay. I'm done.
Go ahead, Steve. Any comments?
Your turn.
I'm done.
Paul?
I have a lot of questions that I prepared here, but I don't think we have time for it. So I was just wondering if I could just submit them to you, Mike and Eileen.
Please do.
But one question I do want to ask is that why was the city council ahead of us on seeing this recycled pen? Shouldn't have come to us first before it went to them. What was the reason?
Just the timing of when it was released. We didn't hold a special WRF-CAC meeting and didn't want to delay the release of the report. So it went to City Council first, then to WRF-CAC.
Does it have anything to do with getting Bartlett Wells on board with the studies?
No, they were on board prior to that.
Yeah, we didn't ask for any action from council at the time. It was just to receive the report also. So, and it was just timing.
But now that we've made all these comments today, is the city council going to reflect on our comments?
I'm sure they will, as well as comments they're going to receive from Citizens Finance Committee, Public Works Advisory Board. I'm sure that those will all be, and we'll make sure we've documented these and provided them.
Thank you, Paul. Val, any comments? Quick comments, or otherwise we'll have to get it in writing.
Yeah,
go ahead, Richard. Go ahead.
Real quick, the comment that your questions, I would like to have that like in public, so like even our memo should be someplace where people can view it. They see what we're talking about instead of just letters, so they could see what the dialogue's about. And so any comments, any questions that we have should go in, and then we should be able to discuss them back before they actually go to city council.
Okay, I'll CC my questions to Mike, to everybody on the committee then.
Okay.
Oh, please! Please don't CC everybody on the board. That is a Brown Act violation. So, what we can do is receive your comments and
agendize them.
Agendize them. Yes.
Same thing. That's why I provided the original copy of our memo for the next meeting. It will be agendized.
Right. So what my concern is not just us, but also the public can see what we're talking about.
That's why we agendize it.
Yeah.
Good. Ginny, any comments?
I just wanted to say that I thought your presentation was really, really good. And I did catch it on TV the other night, too.
Thank you.
Yes, agree. One other quick comment, and I can send to you in writing as well. This is actually from John. It's on, refers to page 8-1. Mike and Eileen, and actually it's paragraph H. 8.1, the financing plan overview, where the last paragraph of that section you have XXX. Once the state water costs are known, his suggestion is create a rate table that show both the increase in wastewater rates and the decrease in the water rates that we've been referring to in our discussion that would result in going from state water to, IPR, the well water. Okay, you got that? Thank you.
Commissioner Donnelly, I did get confirmation from the city attorney that we'll have to some form of referendum for state water also. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for that. Okay, so I think this brings us to any any public comment? Oh, please come forward.
Larry Truesdale, resident of North Morro Bay. A point came up that's still banging around in my head from the discussions today, but that in Choro Creek, we can't use that water because it's high in nitrates. We're now putting a water treatment facility near there, in theory, and will that facility be able to remove nitrates? Because my understanding is reverse osmosis is what you have to resort to, or is it ion exchange to get rid of nitrates? So is that water potentially going to become useful to the city? Because if we're talking about 1,100 acre feet a year, we're putting something in, it's what we're using. And we may need margins. So that's why it keeps bouncing around. If I can answer that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment. Is there a quick response to that from staff, Mr. Liveck or Nunley?
I think there's an opportunity to use that water, probably not run it through the same plant that we're running wastewater through, though. So there may be more economical solutions, such as ion exchange might be more economical than reverse osmosis. But this will all be discussed in the city's One Water planning effort, because that's really the point where the opportunity is going to be to look at the water future for Morro Bay for many decades out.
Okay, thanks. And that somewhat relates to the earlier response on the Choro Valley versus the Morro Valley, the 14 million discrepancy, because a lot of your comments in the beginning of this relate to how much more expensive it could be to, use Choro versus Morro. That will be addressed in more detail later, correct?
I think that is the 14 million. It was related to the cost, how much higher cost it is to be at South Bay Boulevard versus to be in Morro Valley. So that was really just siting, didn't have to do with the groundwater injection.
Okay, but I see a lot of comments in the earlier part of this document indicating a little more expensive in the Choro Valley, just in general, on your treatment.
Barbara, I just want to make sure that we understand your comment and your desire for revisions to the report. Are you referring to the potential reuse opportunities in the Choro Valley that we didn't pursue
right.
as far as
I was referring to
alternatives?
Section 6 there at the beginning, and where it talks about the water reclamation, unlike the lower Morro Valley groundwater basin, the aquifer is not constrained. Many property owners could extract, so you'd have to have different kind of controls. It just looked like there was a lot of assumptions being made and that we don't have exact data on yet. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, and I don't think there were screening level feasibility studies that were performed by the hydrogeologists to look at those potential discharge and reuse alternatives, and I think the intent was they went to a screening level and looked at why some might not be investigated further and why some would be investigated further. So I don't think there was going to be additional costs or analysis on those alternatives.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right, I think we're at closing comments from anybody?
Yeah, I'm just going to mention that, we started this project back in 2013, and we're looking at a completion date of like 2020. Just taking the reclamation part out of it, just for fun, we're looking at 120 some odd $1 million. Cayucas started their project in 2015, and they're looking at completing it in 2018, and they're looking at like $20 million. Okay, you know, there's something seriously, you know, there's something seriously wrong with this picture.
Their 20 million is to take it to secondary, correct, Richard?
Yeah, but they're still getting it down to the outfall.
Right,
When I talked to Robert, he was agreeing. He said that we could do a reclamation portion, and he would consider it, and also using our existing easements. That's why I think that it would behoove us to at least consider it and not go down. It's not like it really behoove us to take a look and at this, and we've been partners for years with Cayucas Sanitary District. And, you know, we're still going to have to be in communication regarding the outfall on this.
So thank you, Richard, for those comments. I think some of that addresses what we had in our earlier finance subcommittee and the presentation and maybe comparison of rates and components, Cayucas and ours, that staff has indicated they will present at the next meeting. So if that is on the agenda, I believe already we've moved on that. So thanks. Ginny had some closing comments, please.
I just had one. I'd like to give a shout out for Rob Livick. I know you're surprised, but I just wanted to say that I did watch the city council meeting the other night, and I thought you provided an excellent overview of the history of the plant, and you also covered some of the site selection process and the budget. And so basically, what I liked the most were the question and answer session. You responded to questions by Councilmember McPherson, and who was very concerned about misstatements and rumors. And what I'd like to suggest is that you turn those questions and answers into a very simple fact sheet and provide it to the community as an insert in the water bills. And you might also make, an extra copies of that available at City Hall, the library, and the community center. So I was told that there were about 40 to 50 people in attendance at the meeting, and when I looked on YouTube for anybody that wants to see the meeting, it's taped. There were only 67 views, so let's say 100 people heard those Q's and A's, and really, some of the answers surprised me. But I thought that you were right on target. You didn't mince words. But I think one of the most important things that I heard was, for the water rate. The sewer rate. You were talking, about a scenario where, back of the envelope, it would cost between 75 cents to $1 per $1 million of construction costs, right? And what you talked about was basically the history of the rate study, and that the project had initially estimated $75 million, and that it was shared with Cayucas, right? And so that funded $72 million, and then you're now looking at the difference between that rate and the new cost for the project, and so that's where you base this assumption of 75 cents to $1. And that would bring it up to, given that we've got $94.5 million change, from the original assumption, that would mean about $185 per family, right, for the new sewer rate. And so if you added in the water rate that is projected, it was in the reclamation plan here for July 2019 of $83. Taxpayers would end up with a rate of about $268. Again, this is not the rate study. This is just back of the envelope. But I think information like that, if you just get that out there, I think it really will go a long way towards alleviating people's concerns, because the figures that I've heard have been all over the board.
So thank you so much for providing that information. And I really, really hope that you will consider my recommendation that you just turn those 10 questions and answers into a one-page fact sheet and get it out to the community. In fact, one of the questions that Valerie raised today about the $14 million difference between moving the plant from the original site to the South Bay, you covered that in the Q's and A's. So, again, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you as well. Any final comments? Okay, thanks for the audience and staff, and we'll look forward to our next meeting, first Tuesday in May, adjourn 5:53. Oh, go ahead. Well, colleagues are done. I'm sorry, go ahead, Rob.
We will be polling the board to see if you're available for a joint meeting with the CFAC also in 2 weeks.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Meeting adjourned, 5:54 p.m.